and so Amoonguss alone can put a lot of disruption across the board. Alex's team revolves often around, Gigantamaxing Lapras. Lapras plus Zacian was a very common combination at the very start of the format, continues to be really strong. Set up those screens with Lapras, often as Light Clay, get a lot of damage off across the board. And then on the other side, you have Mimikyu plus Calyrex Ice as a potential duel, as well as Tyranitar plus Dracozolt. Tyranitar plus Dracozolt, a little bit more offensive, but of course with the Incineroar and the Zacian out here, I'm really hoping to see the Dracozolt, and so fingers crossed, but I think definitely it might not be the #1 go-to option, whereas like Calyrex Ice here is still really consistent and strong across the board and probably the primary damage dealer. Paired with that Mimikyu, you can activate that weakness policy through a self-Shadow Sneak and really go to town from there. So let's get started with this first game.
Let's get started indeed. So players starting off here for Christopher, starting with that Calyrex and Amoonguss to start, and then Alex is going to opt for an Amoonguss as well, paired with that Incineroar. I always love those two together as a lead personally. With the Fake Out, the pressure, the Spore pressure, it offers a lot.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and one of the interesting things about this matchup is both players best, not counter to Amoonguss, but your best switch it into Amoonguss is your opposing Amoonguss, right? Because you can switch into a Spore. These Amoongusses can't really do anything to each other right now, but they can both pressure with the Spore onto the opposing slot next to Amoonguss. Now, the Incineroar here gets that Intimidate off against that Calyrex Ice, so that's definitely a decent start to the game. Commonly these days, Amoongusses will either run something like a Focus Sash or a Koba Berry. With Intimidate, perhaps it's enough for Amoonguss to just take an attack right now from that Calyrex Ice. And so the taunt here, I think, on Alex's Incineroar as he reveals is actually really nice to deal with the opposing Amoonguss, and Alex's Amoonguss here maybe is just content going for a Spore onto the opposing Calyrex slot. There's no free switching right now onto it. I can also opt for Protect. I think that makes a lot of sense. It covers for the option of Calyrex Dynamaxing and going for something like a Max Hailstorm, but Alex here wants to reset that Intimidate. Is actually going to go switch out into Mimikyu.
All right, Mimikyu hitting the field here on Christopher's end, and the opposing Amoonguss also just going for that Protect here. Neither player is really wanting to risk these Pokemon so early on. Incineroar going for that taunt, of course, just hitting into the opposing Amoonguss, and not too much is being done this turn, just a little bit of repositioning.
Repositioning, exactly. Now here, Alex opting for that Flare Blitz option. I think, you could go for another taunt, but, and taunt is a little bit safer if you just want to guarantee Amoonguss doesn't get anything off. But now Christopher knows, hey, taunt might be coming my way, might be inclined to not go for Spore, either go for something like a Switch Out or a Rage Powder if you want to really protect the Mimikyu in this position. But I think that's what's kind of weird about the dynamic of this matchup is that since both players have their Amoonguss out on the field, both players are pressuring Spore. I think I like Alex's position a little bit more just because it's a little bit safer right now. So Christopher is going to basically try to get that Calyrex Ice in safely and is going to withdraw that Amoonguss, saying, I don't want to get Spored, is going to bring out that Calyrex.
Calyrex hitting the field as one ability, and then Unnerved, so no Berry will be coming out from Incineroar later on as long as the Calyrex is on the field. The side Shadow Sneak hitting into the Calyrex, going to be getting that weakness policy off. Both players have been playing a little passively so far, but that was a big move on Christopher's end to kind of start showing that he's ready to put some offensive pressure on here.
Yeah, that was actually such a nice play on Christopher's end. I was wondering how he gets himself out of what the tricky position that he was in, just because the Instant Amoonguss was just so oppressive, especially with that taunt. But ends up getting Calyrex Ice in safely, activates that weakness policy, and it doesn't get put to sleep. I was thinking if you're on Alex's end, one play you could have made that last one was actually doubling up onto Amoonguss with a taunt and a Spore to cover for a switch out option. However, that doesn't work if Amoonguss protects the Mimikyu Trick Room. So, that option, it doesn't cover for everything. The main thing here is that, Christopher actually gets the Calyrex in safely and activates that weakness policy. However, Calyrex Ice really doesn't like going up against that Zacian, so I think the switch out makes a lot of sense. You are able to conserve that Intimidate, bring it back in, and while Calyrex Ice is at +2, I mean, the question here is, are you able to actually effectively knock out that Zacian quickly enough? This Mimikyu is also basically completely useless for, quite a while now, and it's not really putting on offensive pressure either.
Amoonguss hitting the field on Christopher's end. The Zacian coming out for that Incineroar. Getting that attack boost with the Sword here. Interested to see if this Calyrex maxes, and it is going for that max after receiving that weakness policy boost. Where do you think it's going to be targeting into here? What do you think it's going to be trying to eliminate from the field with that Zacian and that Amoonguss in front of it?
Yeah, it's really interesting here because Calyrex Ice, can opt for the Quake onto the instant slot was always safe, right? It also covers for the Zacian switch in, but that's exactly what this Amoonguss Rage Powder can cover for. So if you actually go for a Hailstorm, you do just pick up the knockout onto Amoonguss, which is so huge here, but it's going to be Max Quake. Let's see if +2 Max Quake's actually enough to knock out Amoonguss here.
Oh, 6 HP. Amoonguss is just holding on here, even though the Quake was most likely trying to target into the Zacian Incineroar slot here. It almost picked up the KO on that Amoonguss, but it's sticking around for another turn is going to be absolutely huge here.
Yeah, that's actually such a big deal because imagine if you knock out the Amoonguss, then there's no more redirection support, right? And that's such a big deal because without redirection support, Calyrex can freely launch these Max Quakes into Zacian. Zacian here also doesn't have Substitute, which means that it can't stall out the Dynamax from Calyrex Ice's end as easily. So really critical survival there, and I really like that Rage Powder play from Alex's end to ensure that Zacian comes in safely. The survival there, just, icing on top, and I think is actually really critical here. So I think both players have made some really nice plays so far throughout the course of this game. Now Alex is going to have the late game Dynamax option, probably going to be Dynamaxing that Lapras.
Posing Amoonguss, going for the Rage Powder as well, not wanting to risk a hit on that Calyrex, and Behemoth Blade will be hitting into it. Let's see how much damage it does here. Good amount of damage, honestly. Amoonguss still has a little bit, but not too much going for it, as the Calyrex hits that Max Quake into the Zacian and just picking up that KO right there.
Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised to see Zacian actually just end up fainting this turn, especially when there was, Amoonguss potential support next to it. And Amoonguss on the opposing end definitely ends up taking a lot of damage, but still able to survive, and just the single survival is clutch. But I think Alex may have been willing to go for this trade, right? The idea is, hey, maybe you pick up a knockout, but then now your main damage threats in the Mimikyu and the Calyrex Ice are both asleep, and they haven't taken any sleep turns yet either. And the Amoonguss is so weak until a point, so now the idea is, hey, let me bring out Lapras, and let me just get a lot of damage off across the board. One thing I'm curious about is whether or not there is a Perish Song on this Lapras. I think we're about to see, but a Perish Song, no Perish Song actually means that you can't play towards that end game. Yeah, which is really interesting. So I think from Alex's end, he has that Clear Smog, which is actually really cool in dealing with that Calyrex Ice. I'm really curious what the last Pokemon on Christopher's side is, because something like Tyranitar would be very helpful for this late game, but Alex has kind of a nice late game where it's just going to be really tough to actually deal damage to his side, and it's actually going to be just Incineroar coming out here. So no Tyranitar. Now the question is, how do you actually deal with Lapras in these next couple of turns?
I'm not sure. This Lapras is its special G-Max move does set up an Aurora Veil as well, so at this point, if Christopher already can't really deal with this Lapras well, and it's going to be setting up an Aurora Veil to be even more difficult to deal with, I'm really interested to see how Christopher's going to start navigating this.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take a long time, right? This Lapras isn't designed to just pick up KOs easily, and with the Resonance going into the Amoonguss switch in, you're not really doing any damage there. So what's interesting is that you can keep cycling out the Amoonguss in and back out, and with Calyrex Ice and Mimikyu asleep, like Instant and Amoonguss from Christopher's end aren't really big damage dealers, right? But yeah, I think the tricky thing here for both players is that they can keep switching out their own Amoonguss to keep healing up as well. So I like Alex's position mainly because the Calyrex and the Mimikyu are asleep and they don't put on any pressure against the Lapras. One of the questions I have is, can Christopher position himself to a point where you can actually get a Spore off against the opposing Lapras? I think that would be really, really critical. Just kind of hard to actually do that because the Amoonguss has taken so much damage and it's in KO range from, potential Resonance. This next turn's big, actually. If Alex can call the correct option of what Incineroar goes for here, right? If you expect the Instant to switch out into Amoonguss, you can target it with the Resonance. Looks like he's just content going for a Max Geyser. But yeah, I think, even though the numbers advantage is in Christopher's favor right now, I don't see too much damage up from his end. So he's basically going to need to stall out Lapras's Max and try to actually wake up quickly enough with this Calyrex or that Mimikyu. But there's no super effective damage from his side onto the Lapras, and I think that's what makes this really tricky.
Yeah, number advantage isn't really going to do too much when half of the Pokemon are asleep. The Amoonguss swapping out for that Incineroar here, which the Amoonguss will get some health back with his Regenerator ability because of that. No swapping from the opposing Incineroar means the Max Geyser does connect here. Critical hit and setting the rain as well.
Yeah, that crit, I'm curious of whether or not it mattered. I mean, oh, and Calyrex actually wakes up as well. Okay, and it goes for the Trick Room. So, well, now the thing is you can maybe bring that Amoonguss back out. But of course, with Incineroar being able to pivot in here, now you put on pressure with Fake Out. So, a lot of stuff going on right now. And yeah, Calyrex Ice, that's one of the nice things about it. Unlike something like Glastrier, for example, by bringing out Calyrex Ice, you're able to also use Trick Room, whereas Glastrier, you know, in previous formats, doesn't have that Trick Room option. So actually able to get Trick Room up there, but the thing is now if you're Alex's side, you can just go for like a Fake Out and a Resonance. You see he's opting, thinking about that Max Lightning option. That's really smart because Amoonguss here often is going to want to go for a Protect. If you set up that Electric Train, you just guarantee Amoonguss cannot put you to sleep in subsequent turns. And once again, the question still is, how can you actually do enough damage to Lapras?
Yeah, this Lapras hasn't... nothing has hit into this Lapras yet. It is still sitting at a staggering 462 HP in that Gigantamax form. Aurora Veil up. Alex still kind of debating what to go through. Opting not to go for that Lightning and instead the Taunt, but... let's see what Amoonguss does here. It is going to go for the Protect here. So Taunt won't be able to connect to stop those spores. And Calyrex going for that high horsepower into the Incineroar. With that Clear Smog earlier in the game, unfortunately, it doesn't have the attack boost that it used to, so not doing nearly enough damage to really make a difference. Only doing about a third of its health. And the guys are connecting with that Calyrex. Not doing quite enough damage to take the KO, but bringing it down to the red. Even a Max Geyser in range not going to quite do enough damage here.
Yeah, it's definitely a good chunk though, right? Because Calyrex here can't heal itself, so any amount of damage matters, and the reality is that Christopher, in order to win the game, really needs to utilize his Calyrex as much as possible. So now from Alex's position, like once again, Christopher still just doesn't have very much damage potential from his end. And so I think Alex is definitely in a nice spot right now. Didn't go for that Lightning, but now has the option to potentially switch into the Amoonguss if you're expecting a Spore to come out. Or maybe he's just willing to, yeah, as you see, just staying with Lapras, because Lapras isn't actually going to take too much damage from the opposing side right now. Calyrex's best means of damage output is that high horsepower, but Alex is just getting more damage and it has the better end of the trade-off, right? So I think this is worth it, although I think Flare Blitz into Calyrex Ice there would have been nice.
Spore connecting with that Lapras, putting it to sleep. Another high horsepower from the Calyrex getting to the Incineroar, but the Incineroar is going to get that taunt off on the Amoonguss. So setting the Electric Train earlier on to prevent those spores doesn't really matter now that the Amoonguss can't really do anything with it anyways. Also won't be able to go for a Rage Powder or anything either. And as much as the Lapras is asleep, nothing is really threatening it out on the field right now, and Incineroar has a lot of pressure. It can go with either the Flare Blitz into either target, even with the fire being reduced by the rain. The Calyrex is so close to being KO'd that it might just be able to do enough damage anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this switch is, you know, the only viable option that you can make right now, and that's why I would have liked to see Flare Blitz as an option to like double up onto Calyrex Ice the previous turn. But either way, let's see if this high horsepower is actually able to pick up the KO. I don't think it will, and yeah, the Instance bulk here absolutely huge, allows that to survive. And so it's taking 3 super effective high horsepowers. That Flare Blitz will finish off the Calyrex, and I think that is super, super important because now you're able to just deny the main damage output from Christopher's end, right? Sure, Lapras is asleep and actually manages to wake up right when I say that, so...
Not asleep for long. Alex getting a really nice sleep turn roll and is able to hit a Thunder into that Mimikyu to break its disguise. So this Mimikyu it's still asleep, it's not doing too much, and the disguise is broken, but being able to cycle that Amoonguss out to shake off the taunt definitely was nice. Even if a little unlucky that Lapras woke up so soon.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is that Christopher just didn't have good late game damage, right? Like, especially once the Calyrex Ice was put to sleep. You know, earlier I was like, oh, I'm kind of surprised Alex just gave up Zacian the way he did, but he basically traded Zacian for a Spore onto the opposing Amoonguss. Or onto the opposing Calyrex, and that was actually a really big deal because Alex recognized, hey, Calyrex is your only way to actually win the game in terms of pure damage. Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Mimikyu are so supportive, they're really not going to do very much in terms of pure damage. So, you know, I think Alex right now in a very commanding position just because I don't really see too much offense coming out from the opposing side, but you also be a little bit careful about his timer as your time is actually running dangerously low at this point, so that's one way to potentially lose the game.
Something to always look out for. Sometimes you get so caught up with the game that timer can really start catching up to you. Amoonguss is going to hit the field here. Christopher's Amoonguss hitting the Spore into the slot, of course, not effective against the Amoonguss. Freeze Dry, able to come out here from the Lapras, deal a good chunk of damage onto the Amoonguss, and the freeze! Their RNG is definitely in Alex's favor right now. So unfortunate on Christopher's side. The Mimikyu's taking a nap. That Amoonguss is just frozen, chilling there. And I mean, that was just such a good turn for Alex there.
It's absolutely chilling, just, you know, staying there, not being able to do very much. Definitely a big freeze, but that being said, I think, like, Christopher's path to victory here was really tough, and maybe he actually does manage to wake up, and it does have that Swords Dance, so, you know, that's one other way, like, Christopher can actually do damage in this late game. It's just tricky, because this Amoonguss has clear Smog, right, so you can just keep getting rid of the stat boost. So, I thought Alex was in a really commanding position to win this game anyway, to be honest, despite that freeze, but, you know, definitely a fortunate early wake up, and ultimately, it's just kind of the dynamic of the matchup here, right? Like, Christopher's team, based off the 4 Pokemon he brought, because there wasn't that Tyranitar, just there wasn't actually that much offense to deal with Alex's side of the field. Incineroar and Amoonguss are both really supported. The Clear Smog and the Taunt here are really big techs on the Amoonguss and Incineroar respectively as well, right? Because you have both of those, it's actually pretty easy to, you know, deny some of these big sweeps, the big sweep potential that you typically get from Calyrex Ice. So it's now Mimikyu against the world, and definitely not going to be able to do enough to seal up this one. But I think Alex just had a really good lead. Incineroar plus Amoonguss so consistent, and Christopher made a really nice, you know, switch to get that Calyrex Ice in, but by not actually knocking out that Amoonguss with that max Hailstorm, the Amoonguss from Alex's side just put in so much work with those spores and that redirection support.
All right, this game's going to be wrapping up here. I mean, the Mimikyu has no health left. This is 1-0 for Alex so far. What are you expecting seeing going into the next match here?
I think from Christopher's side, you have to come up with a lead that's more consistent, because Calyrex was not cutting it as a lead option in that last one, right? Part of the issue was, I think Alex actually had a really, really good lead specifically. He was able to get that Intimidate off against Calyrex Ice, had Fake Out Pressure, also has that Taunt to stop the opposing Amoonguss, so his Amoonguss was basically applying significantly more pressure. One approach, I'm not sure what the damage calc on this is, but depending on how the Amoonguss is trained, I'm wondering if like a -1 max Hailstorm can still knock out the Amoonguss. You also could theoretically lead Mimikyu Calyrex Ice and just go for Self Shadow Sneak and max Hailstorm immediately into the Amoonguss. Amoonguss there, you know, can Rage Powder, but then it takes a Sneak, a Hailstorm, and Hail damage, and I would think it would feign from that, even with an Intimidate. Not 100% sure though, but basically you cannot let Amoonguss just put on pressure with potential spores right away in that game.
100%. We saw that half of Christopher's team got put to sleep there, and not being able to pick up that KO with the redirected Max Quake earlier on as well. I mean, that just really, really hurt. And as it stands, Alex's Amoonguss just managed to put some more pressure on in that matchup. And I mean, Christopher definitely has to adjust to make sure that doesn't happen with the Amoonguss. He can't let it run wild like that, or else we're gonna see a repeat of that game 1 here.
Yeah, so let's get into the second game. Sierra, I know you really want to see the Dracozolt. I think it'd be cool. I just think it doesn't match up super well into Lapras, so
I don't think we're gonna see it in this matchup, but I can always dream, right? Leading with that Amoonguss again, and Incineroar and Amoonguss on Alex's side, sticking with the same lead. I mean, it fared very well the first time around. Not too surprised he didn't really switch it up here.
Yeah, I think, you know, Christopher will probably have a different game plan this time around. I was trying to think, what is his best lead option here? Calyrex Ice plus Amoonguss isn't terrible. Like, that's what he led last time around, but he switched out the Calyrex immediately in turn 1 of last time. This time around, you know, like I said, potentially he goes for that Dynamax. He goes for a Max Hailstorm onto Amoonguss. My only question is how the Amoonguss on Alex's end is trained and whether or not it can potentially survive a Max Hailstorm at -1. Calyrex at -1. The other interesting mind game here is, you know, you can see Alex was hovering for that parting shot onto Calyrex, and it's really tempting to do that because Christopher knows that Alex is taunt on his Incineroar, right? So if you expect the taunt to come out and you want to be one step ahead, you know, you just don't let yourself get taunted or go for an attacking move or switch out. Alex, however, on the other hand, if he decides to not taunt Amoonguss and Amoonguss actually spores into Incineroar, he gets punished so heavily. So because of that mind game, looks like he doesn't want to risk it, just wants to try to guarantee the taunt onto Amoonguss turn 1. But I think parting shot into Calyrex is definitely a viable play. That being said, he's opting for protect on his Amoonguss this turn, which I think is also very smart. Just means that no matter what happens here, worst case scenario is what, Calyrex max quakes your Incineroar, but it's not even that bad considering that you've intimidated it.
Sure enough, Amoonguss on Alex's side, as we saw, going for that protect, and Amoonguss on Christopher's side going to go for that protect as well, knowing that there's the possibility of the taunt and doesn't really want to risk that. The Calyrex is going to go for that hailstorm and not doing too much damage, but a decent chunk through protect in all honesty, which means that I'd assume next turn a max hailstorm could clean up that KO there.
Yeah, it looked really close. I think that did 57 damage, which if that is the case, then it really feels like a roll on whether or not the Calyrex can one-shot the Amoonguss with max hailstorm. So yeah, I mean, that is definitely an interesting option, right? Because I was curious what the adjustment here is against Incineroar Amoonguss, and I really like the decision to go for that hailstorm. Looks like if Amoonguss didn't protect there, it actually might have fainted from just the max hailstorm itself. So I like the adjustment there on Christopher's side. I think Alex here ends up making a nice play to not take that much damage, and now you could easily switch out Amoonguss for that regenerator, right? Going to Zacian here could be a little bit risky because you open yourself up to eating up a potential max quake from the opposing Zacian, or sorry, the opposing Calyrex Ice. But I guess the upside here is that you've got the Intimidate off against Calyrex, and so you probably expect to survive. Once again, this Incineroar is just so good against the Calyrex Ice plus the Amoonguss lead.
Amoonguss on Christopher's side, opting to swap out into his own Incineroar here. I mean, through the protect last turn, saw that the Incineroar was trying to taunt the Amoonguss here, so not really wanting to take that taunt. Sure enough, gonna go for it again. I mean, don't necessarily want your Incineroar to get taunted either, but it is definitely a lot better than leaving that Amoonguss vulnerable here. Another max hailstorm. Christopher was trying to go for that KO on the Amoonguss, but instead is just going to be dealing some chip damage to that Zacian here.
Yeah, definitely an interesting turn. I think both players making what's probably their safest play possible, and in the end don't get up like too much out of it. It is actually particularly fascinating to me because the Zacian actually has that sword stance, but not really in a safe spot to actually get that off right now. Christopher getting in that Incineroar into a great spot where you're able to fake out into the opposing Zacian and get that Intimidate off, and so yeah. This has definitely been a little bit more dynamic, I would say, in the first couple of turns than the last game, just because of Calyrex Ice choosing to Dynamax so early on. Looks like Alex, once again, is going to have that late Lapras max, though, and the same question remains, right? How does Christopher deal with Lapras once it gets screens up without any boosts on any of his Pokemon? And how do you even safely get boosts off when there's an Amoonguss with Clear Smog in the back? It's pretty difficult.
Incineroar on the opposing side, hitting into that Zacian. Zacian, of course, going for the protect. Parting shot on to the Calyrex here. Incineroar is going to be going back to Alex, and let's see what he brings out here. All right, Amoonguss going to be hitting the field. I mean, it took a nice little amount of chip damage from that max hailstorm through protect, but with that regenerator ability is back up to full HP here, and Calyrex is just going to go for the max quake for its last turn of max. It is going to be doing a lot of damage here. Critical hit, more than half of the Amoonguss's health gone, but I mean, if it's not enough for a KO, that means that Amoonguss gets to stick around and be annoying for Christopher here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the main thing, right? It sticks around and doesn't actually faint. I think one of the tough things about this matchup for Christopher's end is just debating whether or not to go for Hailstorm or Max Quake. If you can call it correctly and Alex switches into something, you get that super effective damage off, it's so nice. But the tricky thing here is it's actually tough to cover for all of those. Max Quake always does neutral damage, so it's like the safer option. But if you could Hailstorm the Amoonguss on the switch in or have gone for Quake that turns Zacian switched in, would have been absolutely huge. So now Alex has this late game Dynamax to play towards. He hasn't really taken too much damage either. This Amoonguss, so difficult to deal with because you can keep switching it out. Regenerator just keeps healing it back up. Once you get the screens up with Lapras, you're in a really, really good spot. And Alex has played relatively conservatively and safe so far. Hasn't actually really gotten damage across the board yet, but I think he's still definitely in a solid spot because he's weathered the storm from Christopher's end, right? You've wasted Christopher's Dynamax, and you actually haven't even taken that much damage.
Yeah, you don't really need to be dealing too much damage if you're just playing passively to pivot, reposition, and waste the max on Christopher's end, which he has. I mean, I feel like the Calyrex is the main source of offensive pressure here. The fact that it's already maxed, used all 3 turns of its max up, and Alex is sitting there pretty with all 4 of his Pokemon, I feel says a lot about how Alex has been pivoting this match out so far. Sure, he hasn't dealt the most amount of damage, but I mean, if you can get in a position late game to start doing that damage while using up your opponent's resources, that's just as valuable here.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point there. And I will say, getting a Flare Blitz onto Lapras without Lapras actually maxing and having Screens Up is really nice. Gigantamax Lapras, one of the toughest Pokemon in the format to deal with, especially if you don't have super effective attacks, electric, grass, or ground type attacks, or rock type attacks, I should say. And so as a result, getting any damage onto Lapras pre-Dynamax is honestly huge, but now, Lapras can opt for that max. The Calyrex Ice on the opposing side, not really putting on any offensive pressure at -3 attack right now, as you can see. So I think at some point, Christopher's going to want to consider a switch out there, and yeah, go to one of the back options. And running dangerously low on time, but I think Alex got it in there. That was close, though.
He selected just in time here. Kept going back and forth between the Gmax Resonance and the Geyser. Of course, with the Resonance, you want to get that Aurora Veil up so Christopher can't be dealing damage, but as well that Incineroar is sitting out on the field just begging for a max Geyser here. So Alex, last second, almost running out, literally last second, almost running out of time to try and take care of that Incineroar instead here.
Yeah, so Lapras, once again, we see Christopher's 4 Pokemon. It's the same 4 as the last game, so it's kind of the same dilemma as that last match, right? Where it's like, how do you actually deal with this Lapras in the late game? Nice decision to not target Calyrex Ice there. It's so often going to want to switch out there, and the Incineroar looks like it's able to actually survive that, and that's actually a really big deal. If you can't pick up a KO there, I mean, there's just so much more disruption. Because the Instinct can switch out, it can switch back in, it can go for, just general disrupting moves onto the Lapras, and so able to take that super effective Max Geyser. It's a big survival there. Mimikyu comes in now, and now Alex is in an interesting spot where it's like, yeah, Taunt makes a lot of sense. You can Taunt onto the Mimikyu to deny it further Swords Dances, or you can just, break its disguise immediately with the Flare Blitz if you so choose. I think he's opting to consider taunting into the Incineroar slot. That makes sense too, because you cover for that option, switching out into Amoonguss. So something like Taunt plus Resonance into that slot, I think would make a lot of sense right now. Either way, this Lapras definitely in a solid spot, but it really wants to pick up Knockout sooner than later.
What's nice about the Taunt as well into the Incineroar, it is going to swap out here, but even if the Incineroar stayed in, it would deny that parting shot, but the Amoonguss is going to be taking that Taunt, which is a little unfortunate on Christopher's side here, and as well setting the Electric Train here. Even if the Amoonguss wasn't taunted, it still wouldn't be able to go for those spores.
Yeah, I think that play was really safe on Alex's end. It covers for every option. If Incineroar stays in there, you get the knockout. If Calyrex Ice comes in, you get a little bit of damage. And setting up Electric Train is just really nice because it means even if the Amoonguss cycles out and back in, it's very difficult to actually spore until you stall out the terrain. The only awkward thing here for Alex is that he still hasn't really actually done that much damage. And this time around, there's still a Calyrex Ice waiting in the back post Dynamax as well. But now the Amoonguss is in a really tough spot, right? You either just do a little bit of damage to Alex's side, or more likely consider the switch out. But then the question is, who do you actually switch out into? Alex is also in a weird spot where he hasn't actually gotten the Gmax Resonance off here yet, so I think Resonance always just feels like such a good attack that it'd be an absolute waste to not go for it. But Geyser into the Amoonguss could cover for a Calyrex Ice switch in, for example. That being said, I think it's still better to just guarantee the Resonance off for the remainder of this game. And yeah, Amoonguss actually does not switch out, and so I think this works out pretty well for Alex this turn.
Yeah, you always want to go for the Resonance to get that Aurora Veil, and the fact that Christopher kept that Amoonguss in is just the cherry on top here. Incineroar opting for that parting shot just to cover here. and is going to line up switching into the Zacian here.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Alex's HP bars, like everything has taken a little bit of damage, but it's all still in the green. Like, you know, total percent done to Alex's side, like maybe like an average of 40% between all of the Pokemon. I think one thing to maybe watch out for is to not run your time dangerously low. Now, in the last game, like your time itself was really low. I think in terms of the overall timer, it actually might benefit Alex a little bit more. But yeah, that your time is something to, I think, be a little bit aware of. But it's tough, right? I think in a matchup like this, you're dealing with such bulky Pokemon. There's not often a very clear answer on what to do on a turn-to-turn basis. So that's just something to keep in the back of our minds as we go on throughout this match. But the Resonance is going to come out here and is going to do so much damage into the Amoonguss. Is it enough for a KO?
Isn't looking to just pick up that KO and just take the Amoonguss out. Of course, picking up that Aurora Veil, which is going to be so nice and limiting the amount of damage. But the Amoonguss holds on, barely just holding on here. But that missing that KO is definitely not what Alex wanted to see here.
Yeah, it's not ideal, especially because the Amoonguss is just so difficult to deal with. Even if it has a little bit of HP left, it can just switch back out and heal itself, right, with Regenerator, and that's what makes it so tough to deal with. Now, the bright side, I think, for Alex's side is that he has Hydro Pump, right? And Hydro Pump actually covers any switch out option right now onto the Amoonguss slot. And so you don't need to go for something like a Freeze Dry, because if Amoonguss stays in, well, it's only going to go for a Sludge Bomb. It's taunted, so the only option for Amoonguss, should it stay in, is Sludge Bomb. Otherwise, it switches out. And whatever switches in doesn't really want to take a Hydro Pump, right? It's either Incineroar, which is dangerously low, or Calyrex Ice. So I think Alex is still in a really solid spot, especially because he has that Zacian in this late game. And look how little Sludge Bomb does there.
Amoonguss with that Clear Smog hitting into that Mimikyu. It is going to be breaking that Disguise, which is going to be really nice. I'm interested about the Amoonguss not opting out, but the Hydro Pump misses, so it doesn't matter the Amoonguss didn't swap out. It gets to stick around for yet another turn here as the Mimikyu goes for that Swords Dance.
I was just saying how Hydro Pump is a good option to cover all your bases, but the one thing I didn't talk about, Sierra, was the accuracy of that, because that's actually a really bad miss. Right now, the Amoonguss's taunt is over, so you can even protect and switch out, and that's actually, yeah, I mean, having to deal with this Amoonguss for so many more turns is also annoying, because you're also stalling out your own turns of, you know, the Light Screen and the Reflect right now.
Shadow Sneak, picking up slowly chipping that Lapras weight, picking up a little more damage. The Clear Smog does go in the Mimikyu to reset the attack, but nothing happening on this Amoonguss here. And the rain is going to end, but at least another turn of Electric Terrain happening.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, Amoonguss just hangs out with a little bit of HP. That Protect allows it to hang around for even longer. There's still so many turns of screens up right now for Alex, so I honestly still think he's in a pretty good spot. It felt like, though, if that Hydro Pump connected with Amoonguss last turn, he'd be in such a dominating position. Mimikyu no longer opting for those Swords Dances, just wants to get chip damage onto Lapras before potentially fainting. Amoonguss getting that Sludge Bomb off as well. And look how bulky it is.
It is slowly trying to take care of this Lapras, but unfortunately not quite getting there. And a Clear Smog from Alex's Amoonguss is finally going to pick up the KO on Christopher's Amoonguss, and Hydro Pump actually going to connect this time around, dealing massive damage to that Mimikyu, but not enough to pick up that KO there.
So the upside for Christopher this time is actually distributed a lot of damage onto Lapras specifically, and so that is definitely helpful. There's also Calyrex here, and Calyrex this time around is at full HP, right? Now I think from Alex's side, you really want to just get one more KO, so then the Incineroar is forced to come in, and then Incineroar can't intimidate the Zacian any further. Another thing to watch out for from here, though, is the potential self-Shadow Sneak still, right? So if you wanted to deny the Shadow Sneak, you could go for a Rage Powder, for example. But then the Calyrex gets the Glacial Lance off, and that's still a lot of damage across the board. So Amoonguss can, also consider protecting itself, but Calyrex gets to +2 here. It's actually looking a little bit scarier, right? Because initially the idea is, and also look how low Alex's Your Time is. He has 35 seconds left.
I've been watching that. You've been talking about things that are looking scary. I'm just watching this timer slowly go down. I mean, Alex has 4 Pokemon, but it doesn't matter how many Pokemon he has if he has no time to do anything with those Pokemon. The KO is going to finally happen on that Lapras as Christopher goes for that Glacial Lance, but if Alex can't do something here really quick, I mean, it's nothing else in this game is really gonna matter.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter how big your lead is. If your time actually runs to 0 seconds, you will automatically lose the game. So that is becoming a dangerously relevant factor. So the Incineroar here is a really good switch in, right? And I still think Alex's positioning is actually not bad at all. Especially if you can just position your Zacian to come out. As soon as that Mimikyu faints, you're in great shape, right? Because then the Zacian comes out, Calyrex is intimidated, and so it's all about getting Zacian in properly. And this is a great protect, I think, to just, yeah, bypass the fake out. Also stall out things as well, right? You can recognize that Alex's your time is running low, and so you can play towards that because Alex is going to be in a tough spot to actually, you know, make enough moves to actually win the game despite being in an advantageous position.
I think Alex as well is recognizing that his timer is going out. He locked in those moves so fast this time around. Didn't even get a chance to see them, but we see that that Spore does come out into the Mimikyu. Though, there's about 20 seconds left, so maybe he's not quite realizing how scary this situation is for him.
Yeah,
I mean, it's slowly going so down. I just want to tell him, hurry up, like, this is so close, but Mungus going for that protect here. I mean, if Christopher just keeps protecting or just not letting his Pokemon get KO'd, it doesn't matter how quickly Alex can apply that pressure. He's just going to be taking the loss for this.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, it's tough for Alex. I don't blame him because he's you know, it's really tough to identify what the absolute best play is, especially when there's so many potential switch outs. Like, the whole point of this matchup really felt like switches, right? What do you switch in to take these big attacks? But I don't know, there's like, what, 8 seconds left, and it takes like 3 seconds to even input a move. So basically at this point, can Alex win in the next 2 turns? I don't think the answer to that is yes, because you need to get Zacian in. Like, every little thing matters, and with I think only 5 seconds left, like, it feels like Alex would have won this if he maybe had another minute or 2 minutes just because of the positioning that he had with the Zacian. But now, I mean, I think your time is just going to end up, yeah, finishing off the game here, but we'll see.
Yeah, I spent so much time getting in that perfect position to try and close out this game, but just using a little too much of it. And I mean, still going for things such as parting shot here. I mean, the only win con here would be knocking out all of Christopher's Pokemon, which means the Spores and the parting shots aren't really going to be mattering here. Even if it's putting him in theoretically a better game situation, he just needs to be taking these KOs here.
Yeah, there's that high horsepower, so you can see how Zacian was actually positioned to be in a great place in this end game, right? So let's see, I think Alex needs to win this game in 2 turns, basically, and I think what's tricky here is that there's still that Incineroar in the back, right? So you can bring that out. Aurora finally wears off, but Incin now can also go for a fake out. That bypasses another turn, so, oh my goodness. I mean, this is so close, and it feels like Alex, you know, with this Zacian is perfectly positioned to win the game. I just don't think he can get his moves in on time.
As well, we saw on this screen just a few moments ago the 2 minutes left in match. We were waiting out, and unfortunately, this game is coming down so close. Both of the timer for both players coming down to just under 2 minutes. The fact that they only have a couple of Pokemon remaining, and this turn is going to be playing out, but unfortunately, Alex is out of time, which means unless he can miraculously take out every Pokemon this time around, which isn't happening, I don't think there's going to be a win here. Even with 50 seconds left in the battle, I mean, wouldn't Alex's time just, it's already out, right? He just
it's already out,
yeah.
So this move goes in, but then the game is over right now. So, and there are only 40 seconds left in the game anyway, but oh my goodness. I mean,
it's so close.
We like don't see this very often, right? Just because, like, especially in Series 8, it's pretty fast paced, but I think that's like, it's been a long time since I've seen someone lose to your time, and it's tough because, like, you know, Alex was making really good and calculated decisions, but once you start running down to like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you got to start thinking, hey, like, is there actually a possibility I could lose from there? Because I thought he played well overall. Like, he made good moves across the board. He just needed to make them a little bit faster, basically. And on the other side, I really like the Calyrex Ice adjustment to Dynamax turn 1. It's still really tricky, though, because, like, I think he kind of just gets out-bulked, and the Lapras with that screen is just so tough to deal with.
As well, even if the moves were inputted a little sooner, we saw how, like, down to the wire it got with even just the whole match timer, and Alex did have that Pokemon advantage as well, and if the overall match time managed to run out, just having the Pokemon advantage would have sealed up that win for him, but sometimes it's just how it goes. But regardless, a mistake's not going to be made in Game 3, I presume, and let's just get into it.
Let's get into it. I'm curious if it's Blast for Amoonguss or Calyrex Ice and Amoonguss again. It's going to be Incineroar. Okay, so a little bit of a mix-up. I really like that. I think just being able to put on even fake-out pressure to begin with is good, because I think it's clear that Incineroar plus Amoonguss on the opposing side is going to come out. And so I just wasn't a huge fan of the Amoonguss plus the Calyrex lead, even though Christopher made a nice adjustment on turn 1 of the last game. It still didn't actually net him that much at the end of the day, right? So I think the other question here is, when are you actually willing to Dynamax Calyrex? There's an argument to be made where you don't Dynamax immediately to conserve those max turns, because as soon as you get intimidated, you're already doing significantly less damage, right? Alex has shown that he's willing to protect the Amoonguss on turn 1, and so, I mean, Christopher can get greedy, try to snipe off the Amoonguss immediately, but I think Alex just has so many safe options here. Like, he's never just gonna give up the Amoonguss turn 1 to a max Hailstorm immediately. And so I think, like, the question is basically, is it worth committing your Dynamax to try to get this KO when it's very unlikely your opponent will just give it up, or are you just hoping for your opponent to kind of blunder on the first turn? And if you can actually get that knockout onto Amoonguss, I mean, this is a completely different game, but you can see Alex is willing to play it safe, does not want to faint from a turn 1 max Hailstorm.
As well, the Calyrex tried to go for that Hailstorm last time to pick off the Amoonguss and didn't quite get there, so opting not to go for it this time. Amoonguss with that Protect here. Incineroar trying to hit Fake Out into it. Unfortunately, it gets him to the Protect, and Incineroar on Alex's side Fake Out, though it's not going to do much. But the opposing Calyrex is actually going to set up Trick Room here, which is a nice little twist.
Yeah, definitely a twist. Kind of awkward, to be honest, because now Alex has the fastest Pokemon under Trick Room and Amoonguss, and you can just use Spore. So Christopher this turn, I think, maybe wants the position to get that Amoonguss in, but what's tricky is that Alex can keep launching Spores into that Calyrex slot. I don't think we've actually seen too much from Christopher's Incineroar yet, so the question is whether it can actually deal with the Amoonguss on Alex's side. But yeah, you know, that Trick Room is honestly kind of awkward right now, because if Incineroar can't knock out Amoonguss here, then Amoonguss is free to just continue using Spores later on, right? So it's going to be a Flare Blitz. I think that's definitely the best option here. It's like a good amount of damage, you know, brings it down to under 50%. So the thing now is, I guess, if you're Christopher, you can consider switching Calyrex Ice out into the Amoonguss, right? So that can take the Spore and then try to KO Incineroar with a or try to KO the Amoonguss on Alex's side with the Flare Blitz. So that turn actually worked out pretty well for Christopher, all things considered, especially because that Flare Blitz actually did over 50% to the Amoonguss.
Sure enough, the Calyrex is going to swap out into the Amoonguss. So Christopher not wanting to risk that Spore here, which very valid. The Spore, of course, hitting into that slot. The Incineroar is going to be hitting the parting shot into Christopher's Incineroar here and being able to cycle out. So I think the question is this Flare Blitz going to pick up the KO on the Amoonguss now after that attack drop? I don't think it will it?
Yeah, I don't think it will either, and that's once again just been such a pivotal element of this game, right? Or this set. Pokemon hanging out with just a little bit of HP. All you need is a little bit of HP, especially when you're using something like Amoonguss. And so that's a great parting shot onto the opposing Incineroar to guarantee that Amoonguss should survive. So barring a critical hit here, I think Amoonguss will hang on. And
4 HP! Barely holding on here. That parting shot making all of the difference. And sure enough, Alex going right into that menu for the swap out here. Man, that's 2 games in a row now where Christopher has been so close to picking up that KO, but not managing to quite get there.
Absolutely, and I wonder here, if you're on Christopher's side, you know, you can double up onto the Amoonguss slot, but the thing is, then you have to worry about Amoonguss protecting. So it's like so obvious Amoonguss wants to switch out, it's just, you're not sure what turn that's going to happen, right? So Christopher could have spored into the Amoonguss switch out. Let's see if he actually went for that. It's spored! Oh, but he goes into Lapras.
And if he spored into the Amoonguss slot there, that would have been such a good call. But opting played a little safer, trying to hit into that Lapras with the Protect. Incineroar on Christopher's side, just going with that Flare Blitz into Alex's Incineroar, just looking to pick up the potential KO on the Amoonguss if it's stuck around.
Yeah, so let's see. I mean, yeah, Amoonguss just being able to conserve and save HP in general is just such a big deal, right? So Christopher had the opportunity to potentially go for a Spore onto that Amoonguss switch out, but once again, he wanted to cover for the Lapras of actually maxing that turn, but Alex doesn't give it to him, basically. Gets the Incineroar in, now that pressures with a potential Fake Out. Lapras can go for either a Resonance onto Amoonguss or a Geyser onto Incineroar, and so yeah, the main thing like Christopher really wants to do in this game is somehow get a Spore off into Lapras, but Alex has maneuvered the last 2 turns quite nicely, so that Christopher hasn't been able to, Spore. And then conserving that Fake Out is also really, really nice to be able to bring it on a turn where you can just click Fake Out onto the Amoonguss slot.
Lapras going for that Gigantamax here. Great, and Amoonguss on Christopher's side just opting for that Protect, knowing there's that max Resonance potential and the Fake Out potential, and not really wanting to risk it. The opposing Incineroar will be hitting a Parting Shot into this Lapras, bringing down its special attack, which I slowly starts making it so this Lapras isn't as scary.
Yeah, I thought one interesting play Alex could have made this turn was, go for the, let's see, first of all, Calyrex comes in, and so we'll see Lapras' move play out first. But, I mean, first of all, it's definitely safe to go for that Fake Out onto Amoonguss. I think that's always good. There's just no reason to risk getting spored. And, yeah, the Max Lightning comes out, and I actually think that's the best option. You could go for Resonance there, but then the Amoonguss puts on pressure with Spore the subsequent turn, whereas by going for that Lightning, now Amoonguss can't Spore your Lapras this next turn. And then you can go for the Resonance the subsequent turn. So I like how Alex has played this one. Definitely safe with that Lapras, but, once again, critical surviving with Amoonguss earlier, and now Lapras still in a really commanding spot. The Lapras now can get that Resonance off. This Incineroar can't really do anything, the Amoonguss can't really do anything, can't Spore either of these Pokemon, maybe Sludge Bomb for a little bit of damage. Christopher now can consider switching the Amoonguss out into the Incineroar to take that Resonance. I think from Alex's side, it's better to just guarantee the screens up for 8 turns of the game rather than try to get some damage in on an Incineroar switch in. So even though it's tempting to maybe try to Geyser as you think Amoonguss is going to switch out, I think it's always better to just guarantee that you have the Light Screen and the Reflect up for the next 8 turns of the game.
Sure enough, the Amoonguss is switching out into the Incineroar. Incineroar coming back on the field to intimidate on Alex's Incineroar, as well as being able to have some Fake Out pressure for the next turn. And Christopher going for that Dynamax on the Calyrex finally. We saw in last game, it was Dynamax right away, but holding off a little later into this match to start dealing some pressure here. As well, it actually has its full attack this time around, which should mean it should actually start doing some good damage here.
Yeah, and that's a really big deal because I feel like in the last 2 games, part of the problem is that Calyrex has just been in a really awkward spot where it gets intimidated right from the start of the game. And the Dynamaxes from Christopher's side in the last couple of games just haven't really resulted in too much, right? So this time around, at least, just as I say that, it gets a stat drop via Parting Shot. So, it feels a little bit bad. It still ends up being -1 attack Calyrex. So, at least it started the turn with neutral and needed to force a Parting Shot. But I think this is why this is so shaky, right? I mean, there's still Zacian in the back. Zacian hasn't even come in yet. Lapras has now set up the screen, so it's still so tricky for Christopher because once again, it's like, how do you actually do that much damage when your opponent's intimidating you? They have screens up, they have Amoonguss for redirection support, and you can't just easily go for like a Self-Shadow Sneak to activate that weakness policy. It's just not really a clear answer, and Amoonguss even survives. It just refuses to fade.
This Amoonguss doing everything it can to stay out on the field. I mean, the -1 attack on that Calyrex and not being able to pick up the KO on the Amoonguss. I mean, it feels a little bad, and Alex really has that pressure now where he can keep bringing that Incineroar back in and keep cycling it out to be bringing this Calyrex down, and same as the last game, really try and do as much as he can to make sure Christopher doesn't get too much out of these Dynamax turns.
Yeah, I think the answer to how Christopher needs to approach this is basically nail the switch-ins, right? If you predict Amoonguss to come in, you need a Hailstorm it, but with no Hailstorms ever going into a potential Amoonguss switch-in, which granted is a very, very difficult play to make, right? Because if it doesn't work out correctly, you just lose so much, right? You're going for a Hailstorm onto something like Incineroar or Lapras or Zacian, but it feels like that's kind of what needed to be the option here as soon as the Amoonguss was able to hang on, because Amoonguss has just been so good for Alex specifically, and Christopher's Amoonguss a little bit weaker from his side of the field. So it's going to be Resonance here into the Incineroar that basically covered for an Amoonguss switch-in, and I think Alex is content, actually getting a crit there, so it's a little bit of of extra damage on top. But the reality is that you don't really need to damage the Incineroar. That's not really too much of an issue. Now, if Alex picked up the KO there, I mean, it does pave the way a little bit easier for Zacian in the endgame for Alex because there's no Intimidate. But yeah, I can definitely respect the Resonance there. It's a pretty safe option. You're still not really taking too much damage. And would you believe it, Sierra? It's Dracozolt!
The Dracozolt finally in game 3. I honestly had given up all hope that we were going to see the Dracozolt. So that is such a lovely surprise here. And I mean, I feel like Christopher hasn't really been doing too much damage in the last couple of games. And I mean, this Dracozolt can start putting out a little more offensive pressure. And I'm really excited actually about this. I'm really excited to see what this Dracozolt can bring.
Yeah, I mean, Dracozolt, actually a nice Pokemon to have. There's that electric terrain up as well, so you can actually go for Bolt Beaks. The problem is, of course, the Incineroar would Fake Out, right? So this turn alone, you can deny Dracozolt an attack with that Fake Out. But, you know, I was wondering if Christopher was going to make any Pokemon adjustments. I thought Tyranitar could have been kind of a fun bring, but I think the reason he didn't bring the Tyranitar is because it's just so poor into, like, Zacian specifically. You don't do any damage to it. You barely tickle Lapras and Incineroar after an Intimidate as well. So I like the Dracozolt mix-up here. The only problem is that, yeah, there's a Fake Out this turn, and Alex has that switch out. Not going to allow not going to allow Christopher to just get a free Bolt Beak into that slot even after this turn. This Fake Out is pretty safe, but maybe Christopher has finally predicted the switch-in. Is it a Hailstorm? It's just another Max Quake.
Another Max Quake coming out here into the Incineroar. I mean, it is doing a good amount of damage considering all of the attack drops on this Calyrex. So, I mean, if he can just keep chipping away at this Incineroar to finally get it out, it would just be beneficial for him here. I mean, the Incineroar now looking potentially for that parting shot. So the thing is here is, like on Christopher's side, both of his attackers are physical attackers, so even if Alex can start cycling that Incineroar a bit more, I feel like that could be like really big here.
All right, this will be interesting because he's opting for the Rage Powder, and High Horsepower comes out and it's actually gonna miss the Amoonguss. Amoonguss just does not want to go down today.
This isn't even a Hustle Dracozolt here, so I mean, on some Dracozolts, you really do expect those misses, but not for this one, which that's just so unfortunate here. So Zacian is going to come out on Alex's side. A little disappointed that the first thing we see the Dracozolt do is miss, but sometimes that is just the game of Pokemon.
It really is. So let's see. I'm curious if like High Horsepower plus Glacial Lance would have actually been enough to knock out the Amoonguss, and it's kind of close. I honestly think Amoonguss might have hung on anyway. It's just so bulky right now without that Hustle on Dracozolt. You know, it's not actually doing increased damage, but definitely still a sore miss, right? And now the thing is that Alex has actually positioned himself to get Zacian in a perfect spot, right? At this point, the screens are up. It has that Swords Dance. I really like that Swords Dance option because this entire time you're setting yourself up for a potential late game Zacian sweep. So looks like Alex really debating between two options, but I think just going for an attack is totally fine. You bring the Incineroar, you get that Intimidate off. I think Dracozolt here wants to probably go into Incineroar as well to intimidate the Zacian. So yeah, definitely a lot of switching right now, but that's really been the name of this game with both players bringing out the Amoonguss and the Incineroar. You're just vying for position constantly, and since both of these teams are generally physically oriented, especially Christopher's side, right? I think Alex has an advantage in this matchup because Lapras doesn't care about the Intimidates, whereas all of Christopher's attackers really don't like going up against these Intimidates.
Both the Incineroars coming out onto the field here. The opposing Calyrex is just going to protect, and I mean, the Zacian with Behemoth Blade not doing anything this time around, and now both players do have that fake-out pressure.
Yeah, that's where Swords Dance would have been really interesting. Imagine if Alex had actually gone for Swords Dance there. Then you have a +2 Zacian ready to sweep in the endgame, it feels like, right? Because at that point, there's just no safe switch-ins to your attacks. And so, had the opportunity to Swords Dance, definitely can respect the option of just targeting Calyrex for as much damage off as possible. And I think Alex still in a fine spot. One thing to note is because these games drag on for so long, though, at some point, your screens will actually expire, right? So you want to make sure you make the most use out of it during those couple of turns. And it feels like Alex can accelerate this game more just because Swords Dance Zacian alone is so powerful.
The double switch out into the Amoongusses now. Both these players just mirroring each other with these swaps. opposing Incineroar is going to fake out into Alex's Amoonguss as Zacian just plays it safe with a Protect.
It's so awkward now, right? Because the Amoonguss switched in, so now Christopher's Amoonguss can just spore into Alex's Zacian. So you can see Alex doesn't want Zacian to get spored. That's the most important Pokemon in this matchup. You can't redirect, for example, a spore away from that Amoonguss because Amoonguss is grass type. So despite Zacian actually coming out, in the end, Christopher positions himself to a point where now he forces Alex's Zacian to go out. So I still feel like this late game favors Alex, but it's all about actually getting a knockout on the board with that Zacian. And I would not be surprised if Timer becomes relevant in this game again.
Amoonguss opting to go for the Protect. Christopher's Incineroar with the taunt onto Alex's Incineroar, and the Christopher's Amoonguss is going to pick up that spore, putting Alex's Incineroar to sleep.
So finally getting that opportunity to spore, right? A lot of what we talked about in this matchup is the free spore, right? A spore in which your opponent cannot actually deny you. And that was a free spore that came out. So this Incineroar now definitely in a trickier spot. I think the tough thing is that now that your Incineroar is put to sleep, like Amoonguss can keep just clicking spore the next couple of turns, right? So Alex making a play here saying, okay, I'm going to hope that you maybe spore my Incineroar slot again. I get Lapras in for free, but if Christopher actually targets the incoming Lapras with the spore, that would be absolutely huge. So I presume Amoonguss is going to spore here. The question is where? Oh, it actually just sludge bombed. Okay.
Fortunately not. The Incineroar going for the taunt, maybe expecting the Amoonguss to stay in, and Christopher opting for that sludge bomb to pick up some more chip onto Alex's Incineroar again. Not picking up the KO, but bringing it very, very close.
Yeah, I like the option of Sludge Bomb there. You know, Incineroar can't heal itself. It's not like Amoonguss with this Regenerator, so any damage is good damage. I think at this point, Timer is running dangerously low. At this time, not as much your time, but, like, it's a potential win condition for both players, right? They still haven't actually gotten damage off, that much damage off, and neither of them have actually picked up a KO. So it is important to try to consider, like, you know, conserving all of your Pokemon so that they don't faint, so that you can win potentially off the Timer. But the tough thing now is, yeah, dealing with Christopher's Amoonguss. It's able to get a lot of these free spores off.
The parting shot coming out from Christopher's Incineroar. The Amoonguss is going to be swapping out. I mean, like you said, with the Timer, both of these players have all of their Pokemon, so if Timer starts becoming really relevant, it potentially only comes down to a single KO or two, but Calyrex is going to be coming out on Christopher's side here. And the opposing Amoonguss is going to hit that spore into the Lapras, putting yet another Pokemon to sleep.
Oh man, I mean, now you have Amoonguss out, you can switch the Lapras out into Incineroar, get another Intimidate off against the opposing Calyrex. The thing to note, though, is that maybe now Calyrex can finally go for, like, a Glacial Lance and KO the Incineroar on the switching, right? There's only 3 minutes left in the battle, and honestly, I can't see this game ending just in terms of knockouts. I think Alex really had a pivotal opportunity to get a Swords Dance off with Zacian earlier, and by not getting Swords Dance off, it forced him to switch out. Now he's in a really awkward spot where he's just trying to get Zacian in safely again, but I just don't see how that's really able to happen right now. Maybe after instant feints here.
Incineroar coming out. The Calyrex just switching back, though, for Christopher's own Incineroar. Neither of these Incineroars are looking too hot with their HP bars, but, I mean, out on the field, there's both Incineroars, both Amoongusses, both players still looking to play this game slow, and it's coming down so close to the Timer, though the Sludge Bomb is going to connect onto Alex's Incineroar and take that KO, and I'm starting to wonder if that one KO is all it's really going to, like, take.
Yeah, this is actually so close. There's 2 minutes left in the battle, so I don't remember how much your time both players have, but if, like, Christopher has over 2 minutes, he can literally just wait out. Yeah, he has over 3 minutes, so theoretically, the game can end in 2 turns. So like you mentioned, I'm wondering if Christopher just runs away with the numbers advantage right now, right? And so it's really close, though. Alex needs to pick up a KO. There's going to be, like, maybe 2 more turns left in the game at most.
You're opting to protect the Zacian instead. The Incineroar trying to hit the fake out into it, and Christopher trying to get the spore as well into it. I mean, with the protect, you can see that there's going to be that fake out pressure, but at the same time, with Timer coming so close down, I don't know. The Clear Smog hitting it into the Incineroar, trying to deal a bit of damage, not quite picking up that KO though, and I mean, if Alex can't pick up a knockout here, then Christopher is just going to be taking this series.
Yeah, and I think there's 60 seconds left, and there's that Dracozolt as a switch-in. Dracozolt alone as a switch-in to a potential Behemoth Blade is a big deal, but no switch-in. Okay, so willing to sacrifice the Incineroar, it looks like here.
With the Behemoth Blade, though, targeting into the Amoonguss instead. The opposing Incineroar with the Flare Blitz hitting into Alex's Amoonguss, not picking up the KO, but getting really close, knocking itself out with the recoil damage. But I'm also wondering, now that both players are down to 3 Pokemon, if just that sheer amount of damage that he did to that Amoonguss is gonna seal that win just off of the HP, because that's what it's gonna come down to now.
It is, yeah, the game will end after this turn, and I think Christopher actually has more HP, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. This game has been so down to the wire, and it's hard to keep track of everyone's HP counts because people keep switching out and in. But with, yeah, Calyrex and Amoonguss as healthy as they are, and Dracozolt at like a decent amount as well, I think Christopher's actually going to eke out of this one. And I mean, that's absolutely wild. Well, we'll see. Lapras is at full HP, but Amoonguss is just so low, I can't see it.
Yeah, that Flare Blitz, I think, was huge there to really bring that down. I mean, we're just waiting 0 till battle ends. It's all coming down to these HP numbers. He said, I'm pretty sure the Dracozolt is like 3/4 of its HP in the back there. So if I had to take a guess here, I think Christopher is just taking this win here.
Yeah, it just like, let's see. Oh, it isn't.
Sure enough, Christopher taking that game off. 2 games in a row where it's coming down to timer. First, Alex taking that loss, running out of the your time timer, and then the overall game timer. Christopher managing to seal that win off. But regardless, there were just still some fantastic games. I mean, all the pivoting and positioning, neither player was doing too much damage, but at the same time, I really think the pivoting and the mind games is interesting all on its own.
Yeah, I think that the last 2 games are probably a really good lesson on why time management is actually really important in Pokemon. You know, if you use a